So what is living in New Hampshire actually like? In today's video, I'm going to discuss some of the actual pros and cons of living in New Hampshire from my own perspective as someone who has been born and raised here and now works here. First, we're going to start with the cons, so let's just jump right into it. New Hampshire has one of the highest property tax rates, hovering around 1.7 to 2% in the country. This can make owning real estate in the state of New Hampshire a little more challenging cost-wise compared to other states. However, I'm going to touch on a couple key points later in this video that likely make up for that higher property tax level in New Hampshire and then some, but I will get to that later in the video. The second con of living in New Hampshire is the majority of it really isn't walkable or offers a big city life similar to other major cities around the country like Boston, New York, etc. Now, to clarify, New Hampshire does have a ton of great places to walk around like trails, neighborhoods, etc. All are very common throughout the state, but when I say walkable, I'm referring to having a consistent lifestyle of being able to live somewhere where you essentially don't need a car to get anywhere. You can leave your home and you can walk to stores, work, and in many parts of New Hampshire, aside from the innermost downtown areas of certain cities and towns, you really do need your own car to get around. Some places do offer public transportation, but buses and companies like Uber do exist to some degree, but it can really be challenging to live solely off of those avenues of transportation in most parts of New Hampshire. Now, con number 3 is going to be quite simply winter. And I know that sounds obvious and you may be saying, Sam, if you don't like winter, then why are you living in New Hampshire? But regardless, for me and many people I know, winter is not the best, right? Now, if you're a big skier or you love the cold or you're into winter sports or maybe you just like snow, this may not be a con for you. You may actually like this. It could be a benefit. But if you've been thinking of moving to New Hampshire from somewhere that has pretty mild winters, you're going to want to buckle up because that is not what New Hampshire is like normally. Now, this past winter has actually been pretty mild, but usually you can expect several large snowstorms throughout the winter. One thing I will note for anyone who is coming from another part of the country that has less snow, New Hampshire tends to remain pretty functional despite the weather as well in the winter. So we don't really shut down because it snows, and unfortunately some people don't even drive slower when it snows. But regardless, I'm personally not a snow person or a cold person, so for me, winter is definitely a con in New Hampshire. But again, this is a subjective one based on, your own preferences. So now we're going to move over to some of the pros of living in New Hampshire. And number 1 is there's no sales tax or income tax in New Hampshire. So going back to the very first con I talked about, this could offset that. Now there are exceptions with sales tax in some cases, including 9% for restaurants, room and car rentals, electricity, telecommunications, etc. And there are also taxes on alcohol, cigarettes, and tobacco and gasoline. Regardless, I would say even though property taxes are higher in New Hampshire, I would argue in most cases the overall cost of living is far less than many other parts of the country. Even compared to our southern neighbor, Massachusetts, the general cost of living, I would say, is a lot higher. Now, pro number 2 is also a subjective one, but the fact that things are more spread out in New Hampshire is something I took for granted until I started traveling and seeing other parts of the country. When you go to a bigger city, you tend to see homes and office buildings just squeezed in side by side. People are on top of each other. Now, some people enjoy that, and it goes back to being more walkable areas, like walkable cities that has more of that lifestyle. But personally, I prefer when things are a little bit more spread out. You have a little bit more room between your neighbors, etc. I like homes with bigger yards, not being stuck in insane traffic 24/7, being able to get from place to place relatively quickly, but still, spaced out. So even though homes and neighborhoods and stores and restaurants are more spread out in New Hampshire, I would say, like in my hometown of Nashua, for instance, it still doesn't take more than about 15 minutes to go from edge to edge in most cases. So it's not like it's spread out an hour apart. Lastly, overall, the location of New Hampshire is a big pro in my opinion. It's a huge benefit, especially in southern New Hampshire where I've grown up, for many reasons, right? When you look at fun things to do, New Hampshire is positioned perfectly because it's within an hour or so of pretty much everything. fun activities up north, outdoor activities like hiking, kayaking, skiing. But it's also just south Massachusetts. You have Boston, countless fun things to do at night or on the weekends. All the way in between, you southern Boston, and you have the mountains, you have the seacoast in between with beaches. So me personally, I like New Hampshire because it feels like a nice calm spot kind of in the middle, but it's not too far away from anything depending on what time of year it is and what I feel like doing. So that wraps up today's video. If you live in New Hampshire currently, I'd love to learn more about what your favorite things are or the things you hate about living in New Hampshire. And if you have any questions about real estate or you're thinking of moving here, even if you're coming from just Massachusetts or some other part of the country, I'd be more than happy to help answer any questions you have. You can check out the links below in the description for additional resources. Check out the other videos there, and I'll see you in the next video.